Hey, sweeties, let's have some fun today because we're talking about BL couples. Specifically, the ones who just didn't work. You know the ones I'm talking about. Those pairings that are supposed to feel romantic, but instead you're just sitting there wondering, is this really happening? Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't about bashing anyone. We all love BL. But sometimes the chemistry between two leads just isn't there, and it can make things feel off. Maybe it's the acting, maybe it's the script, or maybe they just don't vibe together. Whatever the reason, it happens. So I want to share my thoughts on BL couples with the worst chemistry, at least in my opinion, but this is all in good fun, and I'd love to hear your opinions too. Let's get into it and rank these couples, starting with the ones who were okay to the ones that were downright hard to watch. Okay, let's start with Tae and Nui. I'm not gonna lie, they weren't bad. In fact, their pairing in Cherry Magic was kind of sweet. It had a fluffy vibe that matched the show's tone, and their interactions were lighthearted and enjoyable. Sure, their chemistry wasn't fiery or intense, but it didn't need to be because of the nature of the story. They worked well for what they were given, even if it wasn't the most memorable pairing ever. If we're ranking these couples, I'd say they're the least problematic of the bunch, yeah, being that they already have a well-grounded fan base, so anything they throw at us, we have to accept because of the love we already have for them. Krist and Gowan had their moments in Be My Favorite. I mean, Krist isn't exactly the most versatile actor when it comes to romance, but there were times when the emotions felt somewhat believable. Gowan helped carry their chemistry a little bit because he has this natural charm, but let's be honest, their chemistry wasn't consistent. Some scenes worked, and others felt a little awkward, like they were trying too hard to sell it. Still, they weren't terrible. They're just not a couple you'd instantly think of as iconic or unforgettable. Ja and First are great actors, but as a couple in Be My Superstar, their chemistry didn't quite hit the mark. I feel like they had potential, especially since both of them are skilled at conveying emotions, but something about their pairing felt awkward and a bit forced at times. It's surprising because in Don't Say No, they had more believable chemistry. Maybe it was the way their characters were written in Be Mine Superstar with interactions that didn't feel natural, or maybe they just didn't vibe as a couple this time around. Either way, they weren't the worst, but they definitely weren't the best either, leaving their pairing feeling forgettable overall. Okay, let's talk about Perth and Shimon versus Perth and Santa. This one's interesting because we're looking at Perth paired with two different people. Let's start with Perth and Shimon in Dangerous Romance. Now, Perth played the dominant character there, and it worked because Shimon's character fits the relationship so well. Their chemistry wasn't explosive, but it was solid enough to make their story enjoyable. But then comes Perfect 10-liners, where Perth is paired with Santa, and things get weird. First off, both Perth and Santa are used to playing dominant roles. Pairing two dominant male leads as a couple feels off right from the start. Watching Santa try to play the less dominant one, let's not call it bottom since we don't know for sure, felt unnatural. It was almost like watching two forces trying to balance out. But instead of complimenting each other, it just made me cringe. It's not that they're bad actors, it's just that their natural vibes don't mesh well in a romantic pairing. I couldn't feel the connection, and it honestly pulled me out of the story. But I don't know, maybe they'll grow a stronger bond as time goes on. When you compare the two pairings, Perth and Shimon are definitely the stronger duo. Perth and Santa just feel kind of mismatched, and it's hard to see them as a believable couple. Then there's Force and Book. They're one of those pairs that people either love or don't feel at all. They've worked together on multiple projects like Enchante and A Boss and a Babe, and while they've had their cute moments, their chemistry isn't consistent. In Only Friends, it felt like they were trying too hard to sell the relationship, and it ended up feeling forced. No pun intended. Their dynamic lacks the spark that makes you root for them as a couple. It's not awful, but it's not something that leaves a lasting impression either. They're just okay, and sometimes okay isn't enough when you're looking for that magic on screen. Min and Ping are another pair that struggled with chemistry. In The Rebound and My Dear Gangster Oppa, their chemistry often felt surface level, lacking the spark needed to sell their romance. While they had moments where you could see some effort to connect, their pairing felt more like two characters following a script than a couple with genuine feelings. It's not that they didn't try, it just didn't land the way it should have. Watching them together, you can't help but feel like something is missing. And that something is the chemistry that makes a love story believable and engaging. Mark and Poon are another duo that's been paired multiple times, but their chemistry never really takes off. In We Are and Perfect 10-liners, their interactions often felt more platonic than romantic. It's almost like they're better off as friends than as a couple. You can see them trying to make it work, but it doesn't feel natural, and that's a huge problem when you're supposed to sell a love story. Honestly, their pairing just feels flat, no matter how many projects they do together. P and Title had all the screen time in the world to build their chemistry in La Pluie, but it just didn't happen. Their interactions felt stiff, like they were acting out the scenes without really connecting to each other. This was a major letdown because the show had so much potential, but their lack of chemistry made it hard to invest in their relationship. The emotional moments didn't land, and the romance felt forced. They're one of those pairs that makes you wonder what could have been if the casting had been different. Finally, we get to the bottom of the list, Long Lee and Frank the Nazaran. I have to say, Frank and Long Lee's chemistry in OMG Vampire was just not it for me. It felt so flat and awkward that I actually dropped the series because of them. Honestly, I've never really felt much chemistry between them in any of their projects together, so I wasn't surprised. But here's the thing, when I saw Frank as a side character in The Rebound, I couldn't help but think he would have had much better chemistry with Ping than he does with Long Lee. There was just something about Frank in The Rebound that made him feel more natural and relaxed. I could actually imagine him vibing with Ping in a way that felt believable. With Long Lee, though, it's like they're trying too hard, and it just doesn't come across as genuine. Maybe it's their acting styles or how they interact on screen, but whatever it is, they don't click for me at all. It's such a shame because Frank has potential, and pairing him with someone else or making him take a dominant role could have brought out a different side of him. Instead, we're left with a pairing that feels forced and lifeless. Honestly, Frank and Long Lee just don't do it for me, no matter how many projects they're in together. Alright, sweeties, that's my take on these BL couples that just didn't work for me. Now, remember, this is all just my opinion, and we're here for fun, not to tear anyone down. Chemistry is tricky, and sometimes even the best actors just don't vibe the way we hope they will. But now it's your turn. Do you agree with my list, or do you think I missed a couple that should have been here? Let me know in the comments because I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more BL discussions, rankings, and maybe even a little tea now and then. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.